In this module, we're going to take a look at a bonus tool provided with the sample project that comes with this course. The tool allows for the facial animation to be separated into separate segments by facial region, giving us more control over the attenuation of the performance for different regions of the face. Before we start segmenting this performance, let's output a pre-synchronized copy. Right now we have our animation that was captured by the take recorder, and it's been positioned in our sequencer timeline so that it's in sync with our audio. Let's output this to a new animation sequence that'll be baked in the appropriate synchronization. To do this, we'll simply right-click on the face track for our metahuman and choose Bake Animation Sequence. Here we'll go ahead and select our Danielle folder to save this into, and then further go into Animations. Finally, we'll give this a new name. For simplicity, we'll just call this Anim Sync. Say OK, accept the defaults, and export to Animation Sequence. With this, we should now have a new animation sequence available in our content browser under our Danielle MetaHuman under Animations. And here it is, Anim Sync. I'll select it and use Ctrl+S to save. And now that this is selected, we can run our bonus tool with it. To find our bonus tool, we'll go to Content and the Automation folder. Here you'll find MHAnim Segmenter. It's version 7 as of this recording. Right-click and choose Run Editor Utility Widget. This will open the basic user interface for this widget. Let's go back to our animation using the back button, and once again. And now we have our animation sync selected. This tool is designed to run on a selected animation sequence in the content browser. If no animation sequence is selected, this will not run properly. Each button is a different mode of running this. There is a multiplier set to 6, and we want to have that default value in general, and we'll show why in just a bit. Now, the most basic way to use this tool is to simply use the Generate Clean Curve set. Let's take a look at what's inside our Anim Sync. If we double-click, we'll find that we have 768 curves. So the bake process, like Take Recorder, recorded a lot of curves that we don't necessarily need. Just pause the playback, and as we scroll over our curves, we'll see that we have a number of control curves for our wrinkle maps, as well as again for levels of detail. Additionally, there are curves that are not for wrinkle maps and not for level of detail, but that simply have 0 as their only value throughout the duration of the entire animation. So these curves are also not necessary since the only value they output is 0. If we go ahead and close this, we can use the Generate Clean Curve set to create a copy of this animation sequence that has no curves that are unnecessary. So with Anim Sync selected, I can click the Generate Clean Curve Set button, and this will create a copy of our animation sequence. And here it is, Anim Sync _clean. If we double click this, we'll find that we have only 88 curves. These are the 88 curves that actually contain data that are not related to level of detail or wrinkle maps. And so this is the actual data that was recorded from our original take. So that's a basic clean, and that makes a really efficient animation sequence. On the opposite end of our spectrum is running the full segment inator. Yeah, okay, it's a silly name. But what this will do is not only clean the unnecessary curves from the data, but also separate the curves into separate animation sequences, one for each group of controls for the face. So let's go ahead and click our Anim Sync and run the full segmenter. Now this will also be multiplying the curve values by 6. And the reason for that is that we're generating 6 different animation sequences, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we'll have to average these out in sequencer when we stack them. So by multiplying the values by 6, we'll have a complete copy of the facial animation when we stack these in sequencer, and they'll be scaled properly. So for example, if we just look at the Anim Sync brow, double click, we find we have only 8 curves. So these are all the curves related to the brow movements. And you can see that in the example here, the brows are moving and no other aspect of the face is moving. You might notice again that these movements are a little bit exaggerated, and that would be a result of these values having been multiplied by 6. So if I were to pause, for example, select a couple curves, and right-click and choose Edit Selected Curves, you'll see that rather than stopping at 1, our values go all the way up to 2.5. So let's put this to use inside our sequencer. For now, I can go ahead and move my segmenter out of the way and go into Sequencer, and we'll add those sequences to our face. So I'll take the existing sequence and just remove it from our sequence. And we'll just add all 6 of our animations. So I'll click on plus animation, and here we have sync brows at the top of the head, and it was added to frame 90. Let's slide that into frame 0, and then we'll move our playhead back to frame 0 so that all our future ads will be in the right spot. Now we can continue adding more animation sequences. So we'll click on animation again, and then we'll use the eyes, and then we'll click on animation again, and we'll choose the nose. There we are. Now, we're not seeing them because they're stacked under animation. We can turn this triangle down and see that here we have brows, eyes, nose. We'll add the mouth, and then the jaw, and finally at the neck. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different animation sequences, all stacked together, all in sync, inside Sequencer. And further, if we spin down the control to the left of these animations, we can see that their weight is set to 1. So Sequencer will add up all the values, let's say, for the jaw, for example, except that the jaw value is always 0 in the 5 non-jaw animation sequences. After adding up all the values, it'll divide by the number of animation sequences that were added up, 6. And this is why we have the multiplier of 6 in the segmenter itself. By multiplying this jaw value by 6, it gets added in, divided by 6 to return to its original values here in Sequencer. So now as we scrub through, we should see the same exact animation as we were before. Now the value of this is that we can attenuate this performance with each one of these animation tracks. So for example, if we decided that the mouth should be opening a bit more, meaning the jaw, we can expand the animation weight for the jaw, and let's go to 1.5. And you see that the jaw is now opening further. We haven't really had to adjust anything else, but now we're getting more performance, more exaggerated output from the jaw performance. Similarly, maybe we want to reduce the amount of movement in the eyes. So we can find the eyes track, expand that animation, and set its weight to 0.8. And now we've reduced the degree to which the eyes are moving left and right. And rather than having to set the values of multipliers or adjust the curves for every single control related to the eyes, we just used 0.8 and multiplied it by all the control curves for the eyes. So this allows us the ability to tune the performance of this metahuman face by face group rather than by individual curves. As before, we can still bake this resulting finished animation to our control rig for further refinement. Simply right-click on our face track, choose Bake to Control Rig, and Face Control Board Control Rig. We'll accept the defaults and hit Create, and this will bake our fully combined animation. It'll disable all of our animation tracks, so we can collapse those. And so now all that animation is available for editing here in the control board, as we did before. As a final note, this tool is set up to provide you the ability to adjust the multiplier value itself using this slider. Again, a value of 6 is ideal. And you can also generate individual control curve groups by using these buttons. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how useful that would be, but it just seemed like the logical thing to do to provide animators with as much flexibility as possible when using the segmenting tool. I hope this helps. Until next time, have fun.